Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, staring at the massive holographic display that showed the enemy fleet. Thousands of alien ships filled the space just outside Earth's solar system. Each one was larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their weapons could destroy cities with a single shot. Their shields could stop anything Earth's military could throw at them. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Hegemony flagship," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. Sarah nodded. She had been expecting this. For 3 days, the alien fleet had been waiting at the edge of their system. The entire galaxy knew what was coming next. It was always the same pattern. The Hegemony would arrive, make their demands, and within hours the target species would surrender. No one had ever successfully resisted them. "Put it through," Sarah ordered. The hologram flickered and changed. Now it showed the bridge of the alien flagship. Admiral Zethkar stood in the center, his tall, reptilian form imposing even through the transmission. His species, the Veltar, had been the first to join the Hegemony 3,000 years ago. They had learned that resistance was pointless. "Admiral Chen of the primitive human species," Zethkar's voice was cold and mechanical through the translator. "I am Admiral Zethkar of the Hegemony Coalition. We represent 12 advanced species and control most of this galaxy." Sarah kept her face calm. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. They all knew this moment would come eventually. Humanity had only been traveling between stars for 50 years. They had built colonies on a dozen worlds and established trade with a few friendly species, but they were nothing compared to the Hegemony. "We have observed your species for some time," Zethkar continued. "You show promise, but you lack guidance. The Hegemony offers you a choice. Surrender now and accept our rule. Your species will be allowed to exist under our protection. Your technology will be improved. Your people will be fed and housed according to Hegemony standards." The alien admiral paused, letting his words sink in. Sarah had heard recordings of similar speeches given to dozens of other species. The Hegemony always presented themselves as benevolent rulers. They claimed to bring peace and order to the galaxy. However, Zethkar's tone grew darker. "If you refuse our generous offer, we will be forced to demonstrate why resistance is futile. Your ships will be destroyed. Your colonies will be occupied. Your homeworld will be bombarded until you beg for mercy." Sarah looked around at her crew. They were good people. The best humanity had to offer. Many of them had families on Earth or the colonies. They deserved better than to become slaves to an alien empire. "You have 72 hours to decide," Zethkar announced. "We suggest you use this time wisely. Contact your leaders. Explain to them that the age of human independence is over. The Hegemony is patient, but our patience has limits." The transmission ended. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Sarah stared at the tactical display showing the enemy fleet. Her own forces looked pitiful in comparison. 200 ships, most of them converted cargo vessels with hastily mounted weapons. The Hegemony had brought 3,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of alien engineering. "Orders, Admiral?" asked Commander Park, her second in command. Sarah turned to face her crew. These men and women had volunteered to stand between Earth and the most powerful military force in the galaxy. They knew they were probably going to die, but they were here anyway. "Send a reply to Admiral Zethkar," she said calmly. "Tell him we need more time to consider his generous offer. Ask for a week to consult with our government." Lieutenant Torres looked up from his station. "Admiral, they gave us 72 hours. "Heard him," Sarah replied. "Send the message anyway." As Torres worked to compose the reply, Sarah activated a secure channel on her personal communicator. The device looked like a standard military unit, but it contained technology that officially didn't exist. "Shadow Base. This is Admiral Chen. Authorization code Black 77 Alpha." The reply came immediately. "Shadow Base confirmed. We've been monitoring the situation, Admiral. All stations report ready. Initiate Phase 1 of the Shadow Protocol. Full communication blackout starting in 30 minutes. Understood. Phase 1 commencing. Good luck, Admiral." Sarah closed the channel and looked back at the tactical display. The hegemony fleet was holding position, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had no idea what was really happening. Commander Park approached her. "Admiral, what's the Shadow Protocol?" Sarah smiled for the first time in days. "Something the hegemony isn't expecting, Commander. Something they've never encountered before." Across the solar system, hidden installations began powering up systems that had been dormant for decades. In the asteroid belt, massive structures disguised as mining operations started revealing their true purpose. On the dark side of the moon, enormous doors slid open to expose launch bays that shouldn't exist. The message was sent to Admiral Zethkar within the hour. His reply was predictably annoyed. "Admiral Chen, the hegemony does not negotiate with inferior species. We have given you more time than you deserve. Use it wisely." But Sarah wasn't planning to use the time for negotiation. All across the solar system, ships were moving. Not the obvious military vessels that the hegemony could see, but other craft. Ships that bent light around themselves, that moved through space without leaving any trace on sensors. On Earth, President Martinez called an emergency session of the World Council. The representatives gathered in the secure bunker deep beneath Geneva. They all knew what was happening above their heads. "Admiral Chen has activated the Shadow Protocol," the president announced. "As of this moment, humanity is at war with the hegemony coalition." Some of the representatives looked terrified. Others seemed resigned to their fate. But a few, those who knew the truth about what humanity had been building for the past 50 years, smiled grimly. The hegemony fleet continued to wait. Their sensors detected increased activity throughout the solar system, but it all seemed consistent, with a species preparing for surrender. Ships were moving, but they appeared to be evacuation vessels. Industrial facilities were working overtime, probably trying to build enough transport capacity for the human population. Admiral Zethkar was pleased with himself. Another species was about to join the hegemony. It was always satisfying when they surrendered without a fight. It saved resources and avoided unnecessary destruction. He had no way of knowing that those evacuation ships were actually carrying exotic matter to weapon systems that could tear holes in spacetime. The industrial facilities were manufacturing ammunition for guns that fired compressed black holes. The transport vessels were actually the most advanced stealth fighters ever built by any species in the galaxy. Sarah Chen stood on her bridge and watched the countdown timer. 68 hours remained until the hegemony's deadline, but the Shadow Protocol had its own timeline, and it was much shorter. "All stations report ready, Admiral," Commander Park announced. Sarah nodded. "Signal all Shadow units. Begin Phase 2 in 12 hours, and Commander?" "Yes, Admiral?" "Send another message to Zethkar. Tell him we appreciate his patience and we'll have an answer for him soon." She didn't mention that the answer wouldn't be the one he was expecting. The hegemony had waited 3 days for Earth's surrender. Instead, they were about to discover that humanity had spent 50 years preparing for this moment. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one that refuses to give up. 3 more days passed and Admiral Zethkar was growing impatient. The human fleet remained in position, making no aggressive moves but also showing no signs of preparing to surrender. His tactical officers reported strange energy readings throughout the solar system, but nothing that seemed threatening. "Sir, the humans are moving more ships," reported his intelligence officer, a spider-like creature from the Nexar species. "Our sensors detect increased traffic between their colonies and their homeworld." Zethkar studied the tactical display. Human vessels were indeed moving in unusual patterns, but they looked like civilian transports and cargo ships. Probably evacuating their leadership, he decided. Standard procedure for species about to surrender. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Admiral Chen was coordinating activities that the hegemony couldn't begin to understand. Her communications officer was in constant contact with installations that didn't officially exist. Ships that weren't on any registry were moving through space using technology that broke every known law of physics. Shadowbase reports all construction units are now operational, Lieutenant Torres announced. Cloaking fields are stable across all sectors. Sarah nodded. For 50 years, ever since humanity's first contact with alien technology, they had been preparing for this day. Not openly, the official policy was peaceful exploration and trade. But in secret, in hidden facilities scattered throughout the solar system, humanity's greatest minds had been working on a single project. The Shadow Protocol wasn't just a military plan. It was humanity's insurance policy against exactly this situation. Admiral, incoming transmission from Earth Command, Torres reported. The hologram flickered to life, showing President Martinez in the underground command center. Behind him, Sarah could see the world's military leaders and top scientists. Admiral, what's the status of the Shadow Fleet? The President asked. All units are operational and ready for deployment, Sarah replied. We have full stealth capability, across 2,000 vessels. The hegemony has no idea they exist. President Martinez nodded grimly. The World Council has voted. If we're going to do this, we're committed. No surrender, no retreat. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. 2,000 ships sounded impressive until you remembered that the hegemony had brought 3,000. But numbers weren't everything. The aliens were about to learn that lesson the hard way. Meanwhile, Admiral Zethkar was receiving his own reports. His science officer, a tall, blue-skinned humanoid from the Altaran Collective, approached his command chair. Admiral, we're detecting some unusual readings from the human industrial installations, energy signatures that don't match. They're known technology. Zethkar barely looked up from his tactical display, probably trying to upgrade their defensive systems. A waste of time, but let them try. It will make their surrender more satisfying. The science officer hesitated. Sir, these readings are different. We've never seen anything like them before. Every primitive species thinks they can innovate their way out of conquest, Zethkar replied dismissively. The humans discovered faster than light travel 50 years ago. They're still children playing with toys they don't understand. But the science officer was right to be concerned. Deep in the asteroid belt, massive facilities that had been disguised as mining operations for decades were now operating at full capacity. They weren't mining rocks. They were manufacturing something far more dangerous. The humans had learned something important during their first 50 years in space. Every alien species they encountered had focused on energy weapons and defensive shields. Plasma cannons, laser arrays, particle beams, all variations on the same basic concept. Their defenses were designed to stop other energy weapons, but humans had taken a different approach. While other species were perfecting energy manipulation, humanity had been working on something the galaxy had never seen: weapons that manipulated space-time itself. Sarah walked through the corridors of the Defiance, heading to a section that wasn't on any official ship blueprints. The elevator descended far deeper than it should have, into levels that were shielded from all sensors. Here, in the heart of the ship, was humanity's greatest secret. The shadow core looked like nothing, more than a sphere of perfectly black material, about the size of a basketball. It sat in the center of a chamber filled with exotic machinery that hurt to look at directly. The air around it seemed to bend and twist in ways that made Sarah's eyes water. "Status report," she asked the chief engineer, a woman named Dr. Kim, who had been working on the Shadow project since its beginning. "All systems green, Admiral. The quantum tunnel drive is stable, stealth fields are at maximum efficiency, and the exotic matter containment is holding steady." Sarah nodded. The Shadow core was what made everything possible. It was a miniature black hole, carefully contained and controlled, that allowed the ship to do impossible things: move through space without creating a disturbance, bend light around the hull to become invisible, phase in and out of normal spacetime. Every ship in the Shadow Fleet had one. 2,000 mobile black holes, each one controlled by technology that the hegemony couldn't even detect, let alone understand. "How long until we're ready for full deployment?" Sarah asked. 6 hours, Admiral. All ships report their shadow cores are synchronized and ready. Sarah smiled. The hegemony was about to get the surprise of their existence. Back on the alien flagship, Admiral Zethkar was growing more irritated by the hour. The humans should have surrendered by now. Every other species had folded within days of seeing the hegemony fleet. What made these primitives think they were special? "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the human admiral," his communications officer reported. Put it through, Zethkar ordered. Admiral Chen appeared on the holographic display, looking calm and confident. Too confident for someone whose species was about to be conquered. Admiral Zethkar, thank you for your continued patience. We've been discussing your offer with our leadership, and we need just a little more time to prepare. Our response. Zethkar's eyes narrowed. Admiral Chen, my patience is not unlimited. You have been given more than enough time to recognize the inevitable. Oh, we recognize it, Sarah replied with a slight smile. We just want to make sure our response is appropriate. The transmission ended, leaving Zethkar staring at the blank screen. Something about the human's tone bothered him. She didn't sound like someone preparing to surrender. She sounded like someone preparing for war, but that was impossible. The human fleet was laughably small and technologically primitive. They had no allies, no secret weapons, no hidden advantages. The hegemony's intelligence network was the best in the galaxy. If humanity had any surprises, they would know about them. What Zethkar didn't know was that humanity's greatest advantage was something the hegemony had never encountered: the ability to keep a secret for 50 years. While other species broadcast their achievements and competed for prestige, humans had learned to hide their most important work. The Shadow Fleet existed in a realm between dimensions, invisible to all sensors, powered by controlled singularities that shouldn't be possible to create. For 5 decades, the best human minds had worked in absolute secrecy, preparing for the day when Earth's independence would be threatened. That day had finally arrived. Sarah returned to the bridge as the countdown timer reached 0. Phase 2 of the Shadow Protocol was beginning. All across the solar system, ships that had never appeared on any scanner were powering up their weapons and preparing to reveal themselves. All Shadow units report ready, Admiral, Commander Park announced. Sarah took her position in the command chair. Signal the fleet. In 12 hours, we show the hegemony what happens when they threaten humanity. The waiting was almost over. Admiral Zethkar paced the bridge of his flagship, his clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. The humans had been stalling for 6 days now, and his superiors were beginning to ask questions. The Hegemony Council expected quick, efficient conquests. Delays made them look weak. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting more unusual energy spikes, his science officer reported. The patterns are getting stronger. Zethkar stopped pacing and studied the display. The energy readings were indeed strange, but they were scattered throughout the solar system. If the humans were trying to build some kind of weapon, they were doing it in the most inefficient way possible. Probably desperate attempts to upgrade their defensive systems, he decided. Let them waste their time. When we attack, their improvised weapons won't help them. What Zethkar couldn't see was the real source of those energy spikes. Hidden in the asteroid belt, disguised as mining equipment, massive shipyards were completing the final stages of humanity's greatest secret. For 50 years, these facilities had been building the Shadow Fleet, one ship at a time. The ships themselves were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were smaller than traditional warships, but that was by design. Each vessel was built around a shadow core, a contained black hole that allowed it to manipulate space-time in ways that broke every known law of physics. Admiral Chen stood in the main construction bay of Shadow Base 1, watching the final ship roll off the production line. The vessel was sleek and dark, its hull made from materials that absorbed all electromagnetic radiation. When it was powered down, it was completely invisible to sensors. When it activated its shadow core, it could phase in and out of normal space. That's the last one, Admiral, reported Dr. Kim, the chief engineer. 2,000 ships all equipped, with full stealth capability and exotic matter weapons. Sarah nodded. And they still have no idea we exist. The Shadow Fleet represented humanity's greatest achievement and biggest gamble. For 5 decades, the world's governments had poured resources into the project, all while maintaining the appearance of being a peaceful, primitive species. They had reverse-engineered alien technology, improved upon it, and developed entirely new branches of physics. The key breakthrough had come 20 years ago, when human scientists discovered how to create stable micro-black holes. Other species, had tried this before, but they always approached it as an energy source. Humans realized the real potential was in space-time manipulation. Dr. Kim, are all ships ready for combat deployment? Sarah asked. Yes, Admiral. Every shadow core is synchronized and stable. Our weapon systems are fully charged, and stealth fields are operating at maximum efficiency. Sarah activated her communicator. All shadow units. This is Admiral Chen. Prepare for final phase activation. Target coordinates are being transmitted now. Across the solar system, 2,000 invisible ships received their orders. They had been hiding in asteroid fields, behind planets, and in the empty spaces between orbits. Now they began moving toward the hegemony fleet, their shadow cores bending space around them to remain undetectable. On the alien flagship, Admiral Zethkar was receiving a very different report. Sir, we're detecting massive power fluctuations throughout the human solar system, his tactical officer announced. Whatever they're doing, it's big. Zethkar studied the readings with growing concern. The energy signatures were unlike anything in the hegemony database. They didn't match any known weapon system or defensive technology. Analysis? He demanded. His science officer worked frantically at her console. Unknown, sir. The energy patterns are impossible. They suggest space-time distortions on a massive scale, but no known technology can produce these effects. For the first time since arriving at Earth, Zethkar felt a touch of uncertainty. The hegemony had conquered hundreds of species over the millennia. They had seen every possible form of resistance, every desperate last-minute weapon. But this was different. Send a transmission to the human admiral, he ordered. I want to know what they're doing. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Admiral Chen on the bridge of her primitive warship. But something had changed. She no longer looked like a defeated commander preparing to surrender. She looked confident, almost excited. Admiral Zethkar, she said with a slight smile. Perfect timing. We were just about to send you a message. What are you doing, human? Zethkar demanded. Our sensors are detecting massive energy buildups throughout your system. Oh, that, Sarah replied casually. We're getting ready to give you our answer to your surrender demand. Zethkar's eyes narrowed. Your answer? Yes. Our answer is no. Before Zethkar could respond, something impossible happened. The space around his fleet began to shimmer and distort. Massive shapes began materializing out of nowhere, as if reality itself was being torn open. The shadow fleet decloaked. 2,000 ships appeared simultaneously, surrounding the hegemony fleet in a perfect sphere. They moved with impossible grace, their hulls seeming to bend light around them. They were smaller than the alien warships, but there was something about them that made Zethkar's blood run cold. Impossible, his science officer whispered. Our sensors show nothing. They don't exist. But they clearly did exist. The tactical display was showing 2,000 contact signatures that hadn't been there moments before. Ships that had somehow hidden from the most advanced sensor technology in the galaxy. Sir, incoming transmission from the human fleet, the communications officer reported, his voice shaking. Admiral Chen's image reappeared, but now she was surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of every ship in both fleets. Admiral Zethkar, allow me to introduce you to humanity's shadow fleet. I believe this is what you call first contact. Zethkar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His 3,000 ships were completely surrounded by an enemy fleet that shouldn't exist. But the numbers weren't what terrified him. It was the technology. How? He managed to ask. 50 years of preparation, Sarah replied. 50 years of building, planning, and waiting for someone like you to threaten our home. Did you really think we spent all that time just trading and exploring? We were learning. We were preparing. The hegemony sensors were going crazy, trying to analyze the human ships. The readings made no sense. The vessels seemed to exist partially, outside normal spacetime. Their hulls were made from materials that shouldn't be possible. Their power sources generated energy signatures that broke every known law of physics. Sir, those aren't normal ships, the science officer reported. Her voice filled with awe and terror. They're using technology we don't understand. Controlled singularities, space-time manipulation, exotic matter weapons. This is beyond anything in our database. Zethkar felt the first real fear he had experienced in centuries of military service. The hegemony had always won because they had superior technology and numbers, but now they faced an enemy whose technology was completely alien to them. Admiral Chen, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. This doesn't have to end in bloodshed. The hegemony is always willing to negotiate with equals. Sarah's smile grew wider. Equals? A few minutes ago, you called us primitive. You threatened to bombard our homeworld until we begged for mercy. Now you want to negotiate? The situation has changed, Zethkar admitted. Yes, it has. You see, Admiral, humans have a saying. Speak softly and carry a big stick. For 50 years we've been speaking very softly. We've been the friendly neighbors, the eager students, the peaceful traders, but we've also been building the biggest stick the galaxy has ever seen. Around the hegemony fleet, the Shadow Fleet held its positions. The alien ships were powerful, but they were designed to fight enemies they could understand. Energy weapons, physical projectiles, electromagnetic shields. They had no defense against weapons that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. What do you want? Zethkar asked. That's simple, Sarah replied. We want you to leave. Pack up your fleet, go home, and never threaten Earth or any human colony again. In return, we won't demonstrate what our weapons can actually do. Zethkar looked at his tactical officers. They were all staring at their displays in confusion and fear. The human ships were doing things that should be impossible, moving through space without generating any detectable energy signatures, phasing in and out of normal reality, creating gravitational fields strong enough to bend light. For the first time in hegemony history, they were facing an enemy whose technology they couldn't understand or counter. The humans hadn't just built a bigger fleet. They had developed an entirely new form of warfare. I need to consult with my superiors, Zethkar said finally. Of course, Sarah replied. Take your time. We'll wait right here. All 2,000 of us. The transmission ended, leaving Zethkar alone with his thoughts and his fear. The hegemony had come to conquer a primitive species. Instead, they had discovered that humanity was far from primitive. They were something new, something dangerous, something that could challenge the established order of the galaxy. The waiting game had just become much more complicated. The hegemony fleet hung in space, completely surrounded by ships that defied everything they thought they knew about physics. Admiral Zethkar had been in emergency communication with the Hegemony Council for 6 hours, and the debate was fierce. They're bluffing, insisted War Commander Thex Mira of the Krylon Empire. No primitive species could develop technology superior to ours. Destroy them now before they realize we've seen through their deception. But Supreme Analyst Velkorin of the Nexar Collective disagreed. Our sensors cannot explain what we're seeing. These ships exist in a state that should be impossible. If they're bluffing, it's with technology we don't understand. Admiral Zethkar watched the human fleet through his view screen. The Shadow Fleet maintained perfect formation around them, each ship positioned with mathematical precision. They weren't moving, weren't charging weapons, weren't doing anything threatening. They were simply there, waiting. Admiral Chen, he transmitted. The Hegemony Council requires a demonstration of your capabilities before any decisions can be made. Sarah's response was immediate. Of course, I was hoping you'd ask. Shadow Fleet, select target Hegemony 7749. Disable only. I repeat, disable only. Zethkar quickly checked his tactical display. Hegemony 7749 was one of his heavy cruisers, positioned on the outer edge of his formation. It was one of their most advanced warships, protected by shields that could stop planet-killing weapons. What happened next changed everything. One of the human ships simply disappeared, not moved quickly or activated stealth systems. It vanished from reality completely. A moment later, it reappeared inside the cruiser's shield perimeter, occupying the same space where the alien ship's weapon systems were located. The impossible happened. Instead of a collision that should have destroyed both vessels, the human ship seemed to exist in the same space as part of the cruiser. Zethkar watched in horrified fascination as the Shadow Fleet vessel extended something that looked like tentacles of pure darkness into the alien ship. "Sir, we're receiving a distress signal from Hegemony 7749, his communications officer reported. Their entire weapon array just stopped working. All systems are shutting down one by one." The human ship phased back out of the cruiser and returned to its position in the Shadow Fleet formation. The disabled alien vessel was still intact, still alive but completely helpless. Its weapons were dead, its engines were offline, and its shields had collapsed. "How?" Zethkar whispered. Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system. "Our ships can phase in and out of normal space-time. When we phase into a solid object, we can selectively interact with its internal systems. We can disable your weapons without harming your crew. We can shut down your engines without breaching your hull. We can do this to every ship in your fleet, simultaneously." The implications were staggering. The Hegemony's entire military doctrine was based on superior firepower and defensive systems. But what good were weapons and shields against an enemy that could simply phase through them? "This is impossible," Zethkar's science officer reported. "They're manipulating space-time on a level we didn't think was achievable. They're not just bending physics, they're rewriting it." Sarah's voice continued. 50 years ago, when humanity first encountered alien technology, we realized something important. Every species in the galaxy has developed along similar paths. Energy weapons, electromagnetic shields, faster-than-light travel based on space folding. You all think the same way. Zethkar was beginning to understand. But humans think differently. Exactly. While you perfected energy manipulation, we focused on space-time manipulation. While you built bigger guns, we learned to phase through reality itself. While you created stronger shields, we developed weapons that ignore shields entirely. The disabled cruiser was a sobering demonstration. The Shadow Fleet had neutralized one of the Hegemony's most powerful warships without firing a shot. They had simply reached inside it and turned off its systems like flipping a light switch. "Admiral," Zethkar said carefully, "what assurance do I have that you won't use this technology for conquest?" Sarah's image appeared on his view screen again. "Because that's not who we are, Admiral. Humans have a concept called defensive warfare. We don't conquer others, but we won't be conquered either. Your fleet came here to force us into submission. Our response is to show you that submission is not an option." Zethkar looked at his tactical display. 3,000 of the galaxy's most advanced warships, rendered helpless by technology they couldn't comprehend. For the first time in Hegemony history, they were outmatched. "Sir, incoming priority transmission from the Council," his communications officer announced. The hologram showed the emergency session of the Hegemony Council. 12 species, the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, all arguing at once. War Commander Thexamira was demanding immediate attack. Supreme Analyst Velkorin was advocating for retreat. Others were suggesting negotiation, alliance, or even surrender. Admiral Zethkar, spoke Chancellor Mordun of the Alteran Collective, the Council's current leader. "What is your assessment of the human military capability?" Zethkar chose his words carefully. "The humans have developed technology that makes our weapons and defenses irrelevant. They can disable our ships at will without destroying them. If they chose to destroy us, I believe they could do so without significant losses." The council chamber fell silent. For 3,000 years, the Hegemony had been the dominant force in the galaxy. They had never encountered a species that could challenge them technologically. However, Zethkar continued, they appear to have no interest in conquest. They simply want us to leave them alone. "Unacceptable," War Commander Thexamira declared. "No species can be allowed to possess technology superior to the Hegemony. We must capture their secrets or destroy them completely." "With respect, War Commander," Zethkar replied, "I don't believe we can do either. Their technology is beyond our understanding, and they have enough ships to match our entire fleet." Supreme Analyst Velkorin accessed her data files. "Admiral, Our intelligence reports suggested humanity had only 200 primitive warships. Where did 2,000 advanced vessels come from? They've been building them in secret for 50 years, Zethkar explained. While we thought they were a peaceful species focused on trade and exploration, they were actually preparing for war. We completely underestimated them. Chancellor Mordoon made a decision. Admiral, you are authorized to begin withdrawal negotiations with the humans. The hegemony cannot afford a war we cannot win. But War Commander Thex Mira was not finished. This is cowardice. The hegemony does not retreat from primitives. These are not primitives, Zethkar said firmly. They are possibly the most advanced military force in the galaxy, and they're offering us a chance to leave with honor intact. The debate continued, but Zethkar had heard enough. He closed the channel and opened a direct communication with Admiral Chen. Admiral, I believe we can reach an understanding, but I need you to know that not all members of the Hegemony Council agree with peaceful resolution. Sarah nodded. We're prepared for that possibility, Admiral, but we'd prefer to solve this without violence. Humans have a saying, it's better to be feared than loved, but it's best to be respected. You have my respect, Zethkar admitted. And my fear. Your technology could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. That's not our goal, Sarah replied. We just want to live in peace. But we've learned that sometimes peace requires strength. The Shadow Fleet is our strength. Zethkar looked at the disabled cruiser floating helplessly in space. Its crew was alive and unharmed, but their ship was completely neutralized. The humans had demonstrated ultimate power with ultimate restraint. What are your terms for our withdrawal? He asked. Sarah smiled. Simple. Leave our space, don't come back, and don't threaten any human colonies. In return, we'll pretend this never happened. No one needs to know that the mighty hegemony was outmatched by a species you thought was primitive. It was a generous offer. The humans could have demanded tribute, territory, or technology transfers. Instead, they were offering the hegemony a face-saving withdrawal. But Zethkar knew that War Commander Thex Mira and her faction would never accept such terms. The hardliners would prefer to fight and die rather than admit defeat to a primitive species. The real test was about to begin. The emergency session of the Hegemony Council had been going on for 12 hours. Admiral Zethkar watched the holographic display as 12 species argued about humanity's ultimatum. Half wanted to negotiate, half wanted to fight, and none of them could agree on anything. War Commander Thex Mira slammed her clawed hand on the council table. We cannot show weakness. If we retreat from these primitives, every conquered species will think they can challenge us. Supreme Analyst Velcorin displayed her data files. War Commander, the humans are not primitives. Their technology is more advanced than ours. Fighting them would be suicide. Then we die with honor, Thex Mira roared. The Krylon Empire has never retreated from battle. Chancellor Morden of the Altaran Collective tried to maintain order. The question is not about honor, it's about survival. If these humans can disable our ships at will, what hope do we have in combat? Admiral Zethkar had been silent through most of the debate, but now he spoke up. I've been studying the human fleet for hours. Their technology doesn't just surpass ours, it makes ours obsolete. They can phase through our shields, disable our weapons without destroying us, and appear anywhere they want instantly. He paused, looking at each council member. But more importantly, they're showing restraint. They could have destroyed my entire fleet by now, but they haven't. They want us to leave peacefully. War Commander Thex Mira's eyes blazed with fury. Admiral Zethkar, you sound like a coward. Are you afraid of these hairless apes? Yes, Zethkar replied honestly. I'm afraid of them, and you should be too. Fear of a superior enemy is wisdom, not cowardice. The council continued to argue, but Zethkar could see that public opinion was shifting. News of the confrontation was spreading throughout hegemony space. Other conquered species were watching to see if the mighty hegemony could be defeated. Meanwhile, Admiral Chen was dealing with her own challenges. Earth's leadership was nervous about the long-term implications of revealing the Shadow Fleet. "Admiral, what happens after this?" President Martinez asked during their secure communication. "We've shown our hand. The entire galaxy will know that humans have advanced military technology." Sarah considered the question carefully. "Mr. President, we've been hiding our capabilities for 50 years. But hiding only works if no one threatens us. The hegemony forced us to reveal ourselves. And now? Now we face the consequences. Some species will fear us, some will try to ally with us, and some will try to steal our technology. We'll need to be ready for all of those possibilities." Dr. Kim, the chief engineer, joined the conversation. "Admiral, we could share some of our less sensitive technology with friendly species, help them defend themselves against hegemony expansion." Sarah nodded. "That's a good idea, Doctor. If we're going to change the balance of power in the galaxy, we should make sure it changes in the right direction." Back on the hegemony flagship, Admiral Zethkar received an urgent message from one of his subordinates. "Sir, we're detecting movement in the Krylon battle group. War Commander Thex Mira has broken formation and is approaching the human fleet." Zethkar cursed under his breath. The Krylon were always the most aggressive members of the hegemony. Thex Mira had obviously decided to test the humans' resolve. "Open a channel to the Krylon flagship," he ordered. Thex Mira's reptilian face appeared on the hologram. "Admiral Zethkar, I am done waiting. The Krylon Empire will show these primitives the price of defying the hegemony. War Commander, you're making a mistake. The humans have superior technology. Don't throw away your ships and crews for pride." "Pride is all we have left," Thex Mira replied. "If we cannot conquer them, we can at least show them that the hegemony fights to the end." The transmission cut off, and Zethkar watched helplessly as 200 Krylon warships broke formation and charged toward the human fleet. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Admiral Chen received the tactical update. "Admiral, 200 alien ships have broken formation and are moving to attack," reported Commander Park. Sarah sighed. She had hoped to resolve this peacefully, but some people only understood force. "Shadow Fleet, intercept the Krylon attack. Force, disable their ships but avoid casualties if possible." What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration of absolute technological superiority. The Shadow Fleet ships phased through space, appearing inside the Krylon formation without warning. They moved through the alien ships like ghosts, reaching into their hulls to disable weapons, engines, and life support systems. Within minutes, 200 of the galaxy's most feared warships were floating dead in space. Their crews were alive, but powerless, their vessels reduced to metal coffins. War Commander Thex Mira's flagship was the last to be disabled. A single Shadow Fleet vessel phased directly into her bridge, its dark hull occupying the same space as her command chair. Tendrils of pure darkness reached out and touched every control panel, every weapon system, every piece of technology on the ship. "Impossible," she whispered as her ship died around her. The Shadow Fleet vessel's commander appeared as a hologram. "War Commander, your ships are disabled, but your crews are safe. This is your only warning. Any further aggressive action will be met with lethal force." Admiral Chen opened a communication channel to all hegemony forces. "This is Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Force. We have demonstrated that we can disable your ships without harming your people. But our restraint has limits. Any further attacks will be answered with the complete destruction of the attacking force." The message was broadcast throughout the hegemony fleet and transmitted back to the council chambers. The reality of humanity's military superiority was now undeniable. Chancellor Morden called for an immediate vote. All in favor of accepting the human terms and withdrawing from their space? 8 species voted for withdrawal. 3 voted to continue fighting. The Krylon Empire predictably abstained since their representative was now trapped on a disabled ship. "The motion passes," Morden announced. "Admiral Zethkar, you are ordered to begin immediate withdrawal from human space." Zethkar felt a mixture of relief and shame. Relief that his people would survive. Shame that the mighty hegemony had been defeated without firing a shot. "Admiral Chen," he transmitted, The hegemony accepts your terms. We will withdraw immediately. Sarah appeared on his view screen one final time. Thank you, Admiral. I hope this is the beginning of a new relationship between our peoples, one based on mutual respect rather than conquest. You have taught us something important today, Zethkar replied. Perhaps it is time for the hegemony to reconsider our methods. The withdrawal took 3 days. The massive alien fleet, with their disabled ships in tow, departed Earth's solar system and disappeared into hyperspace. They left behind a changed galaxy. News of the confrontation spread quickly. Dozens of conquered species began to whisper about resistance. The hegemony's reputation for invincibility was shattered. Some member species began to question their loyalty to an alliance that could be defeated by a single planet. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, watching the last hegemony ships disappear into the distance. The Shadow Fleet had returned to its hiding places, invisible once again but ready to deploy at a moment's notice. What happens now, Admiral? Commander Park asked. Sarah smiled. Now we get back to being the friendly neighbors. But if anyone else decides to threaten Earth or human colonies, they'll discover that the Shadow Fleet is always watching. President Martinez's voice came through the communication system. Admiral, we're receiving contact requests from dozens of species. Some want to establish diplomatic relations. Others want to join a defensive alliance against hegemony expansion. That's good, Sarah replied. The galaxy needs to know that there are alternatives to conquest and submission. Dr. Kim joined them on the observation deck. Admiral, what should we do about our technology? Other species will try to develop their own shadow fleets. Sarah considered the question. We'll share defensive technology with species that prove they'll use it responsibly. But the Shadow Core technology stays with humanity. That's our insurance policy. The Shadow Fleet had changed everything. For the first time in galactic history, a species had successfully resisted hegemony conquest. The age of unopposed alien expansion was over. Humanity had spoken softly for 50 years, building their strength in secret. When the time came to use that strength, they had done so with precision and restraint. They had won without seeking conquest, defended without becoming oppressors. The galaxy would never be the same again, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, 2,000 Shadow Fleet vessels waited patiently, ready to remind anyone who might forget that Earth's surrender was never an option. The hegemony had waited for humanity to bow. Instead, they had learned that some species refused to kneel.